Oh, this video, man. I swear to God. You know who Ninja is? Ninja is a Twitch streamer, right? And who just re-uploads his Twitch content to YouTube. And he's in the rewind. You know, celebrating YouTube creators, YouTube. For fuck's sakes. And there's another creator in there. Sorry, I know you have no interest in this, but let me just finish off. There's another creator in there who hasn't uploaded anything in the guts of a year. And that person's in the thing as well. Leading 2018 creators, folks. It's like, what's wrong with YouTube? Like, idiots. Okay, I'm done. Emails were fire this month. So we're going to dedicate all of follow-up to emails this month. So do you want to take it there, Bill?
Okay, the first one we have listed here is a Liquorice-based con language from Rob. I made a conlang based on Liquorice. I don't remember if this was in response to something that was specifically said on the podcast, or if this was my own idea based on the general themes of the podcast as a whole. Either way, enjoy. Well, no, it's definitely very on brand for the Artifexian podcast. No, I didn't get a chance to read much of this. Did you, Edgar?
So I skimmed it. I'm not going to lie, I skimmed it. It's extensive. I'm going to leave a link to it if it's okay with Rob. We might reach out to him before we put this live. People should go check it out because it's. I think it's although it's silly because it's, you know, obviously a language inspired by the sounds one makes when one eats licorice, but the presentation is. I think the correct presentation for conlangs. Like, there's an extensive grammar written out with loads of examples. There's some in the wild texts, some translated things. It's really, really good and really logically and clearly presented. The only addition I would say for conlangers who maybe look at this and go, oh, I should do something like that is, if at all possible, I would always encourage people to include audio files, because even no matter how fluent you are in like IPA, it's still hard work trying to tease out what those sounds are, you know, and to speak the thing fluently. It's so much easier to just hear an audio recording and then soak up the language that way. So amazing work from Rob. Only thing that could make it better would be the inclusion of an audio file. Links in the show notes if Rob allows us.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of skimmed it a bit as well. I'm really liking what I'm seeing of it.
It's proper professional,
especially this,
which I really like. It's almost like a technical meme in that, like, you didn't need to go professional for this joke, but you went hard professional, and I love it.
And a sample text, that's excellent. I'm very, very impressed with a sample text in English and in the conlang.
And there's a whole joke that Rob, it's called The Liquorice Farmer, that Rob has translated. And it's a really, really long joke, and I love it. It's so good.
What it makes me think of, it's not really that similar, but for some reason what it makes me think of is if you ever read about reconstructing Proto-Indo-European, there's a typical text about a sheep and a horse. I'm just going to Google it here now. It's called Schleicher's Fable.
Can you spell Schleicher?
SCHLEICHER''S Fable. The fable is entitled "The Sheep and the Horses," and it's like a conversation between a sheep and a horse. It's very, very brief, but it's like what this historical linguist reconstructed Proto-Indo-European as being like, and then various other people have reconstructed their own ideas of Proto-Indo-European and like then put it in various languages, like existing languages and stuff.
Man, I had no idea. This is class.
It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. How did you come across this?
Wikipedia hole, probably.
I just got a text from Vodafone there, man. internet service provider, and it says your bill is now ready to view. And every time I see the word bill, I'm always like, bill? I'm like, no, the paper bill. Sorry, not that bill. Continue. It's really frustrating.
That's me.
Everywhere in life, man. But yeah, congratulations, Rob. It is class. It's so good.
The next email we have is from Nazimroth the First. I assume it's something Nazimroth the First rather than Nazimroth I.
I'm assuming the first, yeah, definitely.
Nazimroth the First. And this is an interesting one. So they have a con world, and they're asking about a sort of universal language or a kind of auxiliary language within an empire of that con world, a recently formed empire made of many different species. It would be greatly beneficial if they could all speak and write the same language. This poses the obvious problem that a giant bug, a talking dog, and a human do not have the exact same layout for their vocal organs. So what sounds do you think are the most universally pronounceable from the entire phonetic inventory? This is an interesting one. Like the first thing that would come to mind is that the phonetic inventory is going to be different depending on your physiology.
Bingo.
I mean, the way we have set out the IPA is that it is to do with the placement of the tongue within the human mouth. And that is not going to be the same thing in other species. Like if you have something that has two tongues, then it's going to be very, very different. It's going to be able to make a lot of different sounds. So the way I would approach this is, first of all, actually this is the second idea that came to me, but I think it's an interesting one, is pitch as an element. Because I'd imagine most species capable of hearing will be capable of distinguishing pitch. So rather than having a lot of information encoded purely in the vowels and consonants, that the contour of the word could be very important. So if you have a tonal language, that might be worthwhile. Might get you some of the way.
Are you advocating tonal languages, or are you advocating like full on musical languages?
Give me an example of what you mean by musical language.
As in, like, it's it's an absolute pitch idea. So you're almost just tonal languages, regular tonal languages.
That pitch contour is a linguistic element.
Okay, all right, cool.
Semantic or grammatical or whatever. Now, maybe things that have. Maybe different species do have vastly different abilities or vastly different capability to hear pitch, but it's worth considering it anyway. And the second thing I'd say is consider what things could be allophonic across different species and different physiologies. Like one of the things mentioned here is a giant bug. So they're going to make sounds by clicking their mandibles or whatever. Maybe one particular kind of click would be allophonic to a velar stop in a human mouth. So like a bug clapping whatever of its mandibles would sound like a K, or an uvular ejective or something. Can you do an uvular ejective? Let's find out. Like, is that one of the forbidden grey boys on the...
An ejective? A uvular ejective. I don't think that's one of the ejectives listed.
Well, an ejective is like a... It's like a way of enhancing a plosive or a stop, isn't it?
Yeah, I always wondered whether or not the ejective lists underneath the IPA chart, like the one that everyone knows, whether they're exhaustive or just demonstrative. Because I think
I think they're just demonstrative. Yeah, uvular ejectives exist. They have them in Georgian and in Abkhaz. And Haida, yeah. Go on, Haida. Deadly language.
Do you know what I was thinking for this email?
No.
Not as advanced as you were thinking, but I was thinking about looking if there is a common physiological denominator. So if you look at the IPA chart, you have things like tongue, teeth, and like the palate of the mouth. Mm-hmm. And although a dog's palate, teeth, and tongue are very much different, they're still common. Do you know what I mean? So you could still say that perhaps the same sounds could be produced. And yeah, I was going to advocate looking at all your species and seeing where are the common elements and just make sounds, just list sounds that come from those common elements. The problem with that, of course, was the bug, because the bug is entirely different physiologically. But if it were, a society populated with like dogs and raccoons and lions and whales and like hippos or whatever, I could totally see there just being, a class of dental, palatal, labial sounds that would work across everyone.
So they wouldn't necessarily sound the same, but we would be able to treat them as allophonic.
Yeah, it kind of goes towards what your second idea was. Except with more words and with less clarity. But I think it's a cool notion. I think it's a cool idea. Be interested to see if anyone in the subreddit has anything to say about it.
Sure.
All right, next email.
This is from the Mad King.
The Mad King.
Who is a recent fan, who's just started on the videos, and is in charge of a small indie game studio.
Cool.
And is creating an online game. So that's pretty sweet.
Very cool.
Just reading this email here, I think the Mad King also contacted us on Facebook and sent us a Facebook message. And this would probably be a good place to kind of formally point out that we don't really get much chance to respond to Facebook messages. We don't really use the Facebook Artifexian platform at all anymore. So podcasts, email is probably the best place to reach us directly.
Yeah, email and subreddit for sure. And you can always hit me up on Twitter.
Email in the subreddit, yeah.
But yeah, in terms of Facebook, this was kind of my call. I had just got sick of Facebook's crappy practices with regards to creators. Like the whole thing, like if you post a thing, they just message you and be all like, you want all your followers to see this? Give us money. And I'm like, I don't want to be on a platform that operates like that. So I just basically gave up.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, so the Mad King's question is, he has two high fantasy concepts that he wants to know if they're possible or how they might be achieved. The first one is floating continents, not islands, entire continents. So the lore addresses these continents as the heavens. Primitive cultures could not reach these floating lands and considered them to be the home of the gods, but they're not actually static. They're following a very specific orbit above the ground of the planet. You would see these continents pass above you. And we see that they would not be static in altitude either, that they would go up and down as the gravitational force of the moon would move them up and down. And the second one is the moon of this planet is a part of a small asteroid belt that closely orbits the planet. The belt occasionally loses one of its bodies, which plummets into the face of the planet, in its decaying orbit. So, what can you do with numbers to make this possible?
What do you think, Bill?
I don't see how the first one is possible with hard science.
I can't see it either. The thing with the moon, you're not going to get floating islands, and you're definitely not going to get floating continents. The thing about the moon raising and lowering the planets, I don't think that that's a good scientific explanation, because tides will shift liquids dramatically, but they'll only shift solid substances like earth, like very minutely, to the point where you wouldn't even notice it. So I don't think they would work, and I don't think the explanation given is entirely a good one, but it's high fantasy, and I really like the story behind it, so I just wouldn't care. I'd just be all like, just hand wave it, and don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'd feel. If it is a high fantasy thing, then just go for it.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a cool setup. I really like the idea of the islands floating overhead and like they're seen as the heavens. I think that's really cool. As the second one, the second point about the rings and the moon and the ejection of particles from the rings, I think that's entirely plausible. There is nothing that forbids such a scenario in science. Some sort of perturbation happens and that kicks a lump of rock out of the rings and it's sent plummeting to the world. Totally fine. Mm-hmm. And the concept as well, I can't remember exactly if it was the moon was in the rings or not, but you could totally have a moon in the rings as well. In fact, it'd be really cool because it might clear out a really nice path and that could look really cool in the sky. Like you have a solid ring structure with like this one like hollow circle in the disc where the moon goes through. That could be pretty cool. Although it wouldn't be a very large major moon, to be fair. It'd be a minor moon.
Yeah. Like a Phobos, not a Luna.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, the second point works. First point, not so much, but who cares? High fantasy.
Cool.
All right, and we have one more, Bill, yeah?
Yeah, this is from D. And it's a response to something from a very early podcast episode where I solicited listeners for new language ideas, kind of non-verbal languages.
I love how you're explaining this, Bill, but it's become part of like Artifexian lore where it's like the eternal challenge that people will always respond to for the rest of all time.
Good. As well, you know, people are still going to keep finding it and going back to the first two episodes. So yeah, absolutely.
Even after we're dead, man, which is really weird to think.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. Even after our time on this, even after we have shed our mortal coils, some web archive somewhere will store our stuff for the rest of all eternity until the heat death of the universe.
Fine by me.
Yeah, I'm grand with it. Anyway, yeah, so what's it called? Non-standard communication methods.
So, a humanoid species, a humanoid-ish species, who have hands with extra segments on each digit compared to humans, 4 on each finger and 3 on the thumb. So instead of just being like 3 segments on the finger, 4. So a total of 38 different knuckles. Now let me just think about that. So what's that? 4 by 5, 24.
Live maths, everyone.
What?
Live maths.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's right. Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's right. So it's 4 fingers and a thumb, just like people. That's the bit I was trying to work out. So they get around this by using they can't really speak because they're an aquatic species. Mm-hmm. They get around this by using their knuckles to tap on each other.
To use their knuckles to tap on each other.
Like they tap 2 knuckles together.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So like one from their like right hand, so to speak, and one from their left hand.
I guess.
And the visual combination of doing this would represent some sort of like in quotes sound. Yeah.
I guess so. And that gives us 2.7 exponent 11 different kinds of combinations of knuckles.
That's a lot of combinations.
That's a lot of combinations. Now, yeah, like I can see this being a system of encoding information for sure. But I'm curious about these numbers because I took 2 and raised it to the power of 38 and I got 2.7 exponent 11. but how are you going to tap the first knuckle of your right index finger against the second knuckle of your right index finger? Not all combinations of 38 are possible. So there's a, I don't know, not exactly logistical, but there's a flaw here.
Yeah, but
those figures.
It's not like there's a flaw in the system, it's just a flaw in the number of outputs, like, you know?
Yeah, the specific thing of the outputs. This could be a good system for encoding information. As regards making a full language out of this, I think it would probably need to be a little bit more, because, like, tapping your first knuckle of your right index finger against the second knuckle of your left middle finger, it looks very similar to tapping the third knuckle of your right index finger to the second knuckle of your left middle finger.
Yeah, there's not much distinction going on, for sure.
So, you know, maybe there'd be a kind of a rhythmic element to it, or something. I think it would probably need something a little bit more, because it's very kind of dry and static as it is. And what about it would make it have external reference, if you know what I mean? Like,
no, what do you mean by external reference?
Like reference, like things that is referring to. Well, you can see how that. I can see how that would happen with language. That, like, words take on associations with things, but just tapping a knuckle against another knuckle. First of all, it will sound very similar, so it'll be hard to distinguish in reference to other things. And
right, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I could see the system collapsing down to essentially Morse code. Because if we take it that, like, say, here we go, tapping with your, like, first knuckle of your right hand on your left hand looks very similar to tapping with your, like, second knuckle of your right hand on your left hand. I would imagine then they would start just having a tapping surface, say right hand, and a tapped surface, say left hand, and then just, like, do things like, you know, like Morse code, basically. You have a series of quick taps would be some sort of letter, and then, like, a hold where you just lay your finger on the left hand would be another letter, and they'd bounce back and forward. And perhaps they could even do, like, the short sounds on one knuckle, and then the longer sounds on another knuckle. So they could hold up one finger from the other hand and then bounce back and forth between two knuckles, varying the rhythm of the tapping. And so you just get visual Morse code. And maybe their brains are adapted to their visual sense is quicker than ours, so they can process in, like, these, say, very, very quick taps way faster than we can. So they could actually, like, in real time read or visually read this, like, rapid fire Morse code.
Yeah.
I could see that being a thing, because I think, what you pointed out earlier about it being all kind of, like, very samey. I think that would be a flaw in it. It'd be hard to distinguish what's going on. But yeah, I think it's a cool suggestion, and I believe this must be Dee's second or third attempt at the challenge. So we have an extremely avid listener who's all like, "I must do this," and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, keep them coming. Absolutely, keep them coming.
Definitely. So yeah, is that it for emails?
I think that is it for emails.
Boom. Keep them coming, guys. Again, this month they were awesome emails. I really thoroughly enjoyed reading through them. So
for this episode, I have written another letter. Again from the placeholderly named Planet of Romance.
Ooh, we're still in romance. Excellent.
We're still in romance, and it's well, you can possibly see why I put, or why I wrote this for this episode. I'll just read it out and see what you think.
And also, it's 700 words long according to yourself, so that's a trimming down.
A little bit shorter.
A little bit shorter.
A little bit shorter than the last 2 months.
Oh, can you hear that?
I heard a sort of a scraping. It might have been a cat.
Yeah, my cat, like, has beef with the window. And it sits there.
Oh God, he's really making a racket.
Yeah, he sits there and he does this weird, it's not a hiss and it's not a meow, it's like this weird growly thing where he rapidly vibrates its jaws up and down and creates that weird chirpy angry sound. And he'll do that, just like staring at the window. Nothing's out there. He just is angry at the concept of windows.
Is it his reflection in the window?
No, because he's too low down to see the window. Like, he's looking up at the window of the door from below. So maybe it's a bird he sees, but like it's constant. He's always at this. You're just going to have to record and be okay with it. I'll see if I can get rid of him in post. Yeah. Here's hoping.
Avdien, thank you dearly for your last letter. My wound is healing nicely. The recuperation here in Utvev has been most regenerative, not only for my body, but for my mind, my spirit, and my soul. The social circuit here has done much to revive me. Even though I am on half pay, my cousin secured me an administrative post, little more than a sinecure, in truth. My duties are far from onerous, but the extra cash, along with my injury compensation, means I have had a heavy purse while recovering here. Thankfully, though, there are many revels which have assisted greatly in lightening this burden. The social youth of Utvev consider a dashing lieutenant of the Tamar Company, bearing a battle scar and limping from a war wound, a handsome spectacle indeed. And I have been invited to no fewer than 3 parties each night of this festive season. My account of the Battle of Selin Lake has been recounted so many times, embellished to no more than the appropriate amount, that I feel sure I must be telling it in my sleep. I was at the most curious party last night. A licensed prospector was holding a Year's Rise celebration in his palace, and his son insisted that I should be there. Or perhaps it was his nephew. The fellow was rather dull, but the party sounded exciting, and so I graced him with my attendance. You are probably wondering how this letter has reached you so quickly. Do not worry, my friend, for in Utvev they celebrate Year's Rise several days earlier than we do. I tried to get an explanation from one of my hosts why they do things so strangely, but they could not really explain how they reckoned the change in the year. I must confess that I was then pressed upon to clarify how we reckon our year in Mirsphere, and found myself unequal to a clear explanation. It simply is so. In any case, the party was magnificent and peculiar at once. The majority of the evening was taken up in great revelry, dancing a new dance adapted from a Koiri rhythm that has been fashionable of late in Utvev. Has it come into vogue at home yet? Drinking brandy and fine wines, and being entertained by a troupe of acrobat players from somewhere to the far south of Anshes. A good 100 or more people must have been there, and all dressed in their festival finest. The fashions are much like home. I danced my share and recounted my story of Selin Lake at least twice more, and was heartily applauded both times. My fist nor my throat ever wanted for a drink, thanks to my admiring audience, and I made the acquaintance of a young poet with the most striking eyes. As the evening drew on and the guests began to retire to their own homes for their private Year's Rise observances, I was asked to stay and take part in the more intimate gathering of close friends and family, the nephew insisting that I was part of his personal circle. We recited the same prayers as I was familiar with, or at least the words were the same, but the rhythm and the cadence were very different, and not solely because of the local accent. Rather than baked fruit and fish, we ate a small meal of sky jelly, native to somewhere to the west, but long popular in Utvev, and their typical Year's Rise meal. We drank 3 toasts of good Mirsphere brandy, and spent the remainder of the evening in much quieter, gentler pursuits than I had expected. It is curious how we 2 cities, so alike, so aligned in our purpose, and united by our familial bonds and our common tongue, can yet be so alien. It is often the least changes that have the most striking effect upon the stranger. In a temple in Anshes or the tent of a Hoitan chief, one is prepared for the unfamiliar, But when the unfamiliar hides within years' rise prayers one has known all of their life, the effect is increased manyfold. I hope your own years' rise revels were glad, my friend. I await your next letter eagerly, and hope to be returned to full health soon. If you encounter a Tamari probationary by the name of Yartlen, who I hear is on leave in Mirsphere, stay clear of the card table. I am sure the little sneak is a cheat. Now, I must go and ask my striking young poet whether I really have been telling war tales in my sleep. Your friend, Dajag Teshensha, Lieutenant bound Tamar Company.
Very cool. That is probably the piece that has held my attention the most of yours, Bill.
Really?
Yeah, because sometimes, I'm not going to lie, man, sometimes I zone out a little bit because the language is quite, and I mean this in a good way, antiquated.
Yeah.
And it's not a thing, like we all know my feelings on Temeraire, for example. It's not a thing that I enjoy, but something about this kept me kind of reading, and I had to remind myself to take notes, whereas usually I take a ton of notes and don't listen as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's good. I like it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to just launch in with some questions?
Sure.
Or let me summarize here. This is not really related to anything we've seen before, other than it's a tale of two cities. We learn more about the culture of the two cities on Romance. Yeah.
There are connections to the first letter particularly. Well, yeah, only really to the first letter that I wrote set in Romance, but it's not a continuation of the story as such.
Is the connection just I can't pronounce it. Yartlen. Is that the connection?
That is one connection.
Oh, there's another connection. Oh, I didn't get that. Now, Yartlen is meant to be on leave in Mirsphere, right? Now,
yes.
When we last left him, was that in Mirsphere? Like, what's the chronology here in terms of the Yartlen story with the whole, like, the ship being taken and things like that and relics?
So the last thing that Yartlen wrote was that they were returning to Mirsphere.
Okay, so he is...
They were on their way back to Mirsphere.
Okay, so he is now... So this is set... This piece is set after that Yartlen story. He is now currently in Mirsphere, or we think he's in Mirsphere.
As far as the Jag knows, yeah. Yartlen is in Mirsphere.
And he's also a snake. I like it. Snaky man. Okay, now, so non-plot related questions here. What is a sinecure? You wrote here, even though I am on half pay, my cousin secured me an administrative post, little more than a sinecure in truth. I've never heard that word before.
So a sinecure is like an office or a title or a post that gives you benefits but doesn't really require much work.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. So like a cushy day job is a sinecure.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, like it would often not even really be a proper job. Like it would be like a kind of a nepotistic thing where it's like, oh, I'll make you a director in this foundation and there's like a good pay, but you don't actually have to do anything and go to any meetings.
Oh, is this a word still in common parlance or is this an antiquated word?
I don't know how common it is.
Oh, because again, I've never seen it before. You then go on to say, a licensed prospector was holding a year-rise celebration in his palace. What is a licensed prospector?
So a licensed prospector is it's sort of a role or a job within the various kind of spires city-states, where they it's kind of to do with exploiting other countries or other cultures. They convince them to become franchisees or take up contracts or engage in sort of some kind of trade with Spire's commerce or with Spire's companies, but they tend to be exploitative.
Oh.
So it's a kind of a sort of, in a way, it's a kind of a colonialism at a slight remove.
I was going to say like economic colonialism.
Yeah.
Now, is licensed prospector a real term, or have you made it up for romance?
I made it up.
You made it up. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I assume year rise is just the new year.
Yeah, year's rise is the celebration of the change in the year.
I do like there's a little bit of calendar talk about how you reckon the year is very good. Thank you.
I know what the audience want, Edgar.
More stuff. Again, let me find the quote, because I think I should start quoting this as opposed to just asking random questions out of context. So then you say here, my account of the Battle of Selin Lake has been recounted so many times that I feel sure I must be telling it in my sleep. Battle of Selin Lake. Is this a thing that came up before? Or is this just a new bit of?
That's the other connection. Yeah, Yartlen's letter refers to the Battle of Selin Lake as well.
All right. What was the Battle of Selin Lake?
We never find out. It's just Yartlen says that they must tell their cousin about it.
Oh, okay, cool. What is a sky jelly? We ate a small meal of sky jelly. I want to know what a sky jelly is.
It's like an aerial jellyfish.
An aerial jellyfish? Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. Looks the same as a jellyfish sort of jazz?
Kinda, yeah.
Oh, very, very cool. And then finally, last thing that kind of piqued my interest. I realise a lot of this isn't actually interrogating your narrative and more kind of asking what do things mean. But what does, at the end you write, your friend, I'm going to butcher this, Dazhag Te Shensha. His job is lieutenant bound to Tamar Company. What does it mean to be a lieutenant bound?
A lieutenant bound is the Tamar Company term for when they're not actively serving on a vessel. In this case, Dajag is like on the land and isn't in a vessel, is on half pay, recovering from an injury, and got this cushy administrative role.
Oh, okay. And again, this is your terminology. This isn't real world terminology.
I'm not aware of it being real world terminology.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's I created it. Like getting half pay while not serving was a thing that navies would do. So I got the idea from that, but it's just Dajag is specifying that that's where they're at.
Cool. All right. That was pretty much all the cues I had for this piece. Do you want to do the usual where you tell me all the neat little Easter eggs and stuff that I have failed to pick up on?
No, you pretty much nailed it.
Oh, excellent. Short section. Excellent. End the podcast. See you all in the new year. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. So yeah, the two cities, Mirsphere and Otvev, I mentioned those I mentioned Mirsphere in the first letter. Otvev was mentioned in the one last episode. Mm-hmm. I just mentioned a few new locations within Romance. The Koiri, the Anshas, and what was the third one? Oh yeah, the Hoitan chief.
Hoitan chief.
Hoitan. And yeah, so it's just kind of a description of you learn a little bit more about the kind of the Spires kind of culture. And you see two perspectives, two little bits of details on how they celebrate the new year. And that's why I put it for this episode, because, it's going to be the last one of the year. And make it kind of a festive winter festival celebration sort of theme.
Man, I totally missed that part. That's so obvious. Do you know what actually two things that I should have brought up earlier. I do like the way you've kind of done a thing where the author is aware that the two cultures or two cities are very similar yet completely different. I think that's cool because generally the people or the things we kind of like have the most animosity for tend to be the ones that are most like us. So I think that's a really cool thing. And also, it reminds me of two things. It reminds me of wartime dramas where you'd see soldiers walking in the street, like they're on leave, but they're in the kind of uniform. It reminds me of that, and also reminds me of Korea, in where the same thing occurred. Every time myself and the captain went out for like dinner or something, you'd see loads of teenagers in military gear, because I believe there's mandatory military service in Korea straight after school. So there'd be a lot of people walking around in military gear, on dates and stuff, and it kind of. I remember thinking that, wow, it really harkens back to like World War One sort of thing, and then this reminds me of that sort of thing. So that was kind of cool. Brought back memories for me, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, the young officers of the companies definitely kind of swagger around in their finest uniforms for social reasons.
Bill, I know I said this last time, but for a New Year's gift for everyone, could we get a map?
Oh, yeah, you did say that.
I would love... Now that we're introducing... first of all, I think you should totally keep going on the romance bent, because I really like this setting. I think it's class. Sky jellyfish. Like, what more do you want? But now that we're introducing more things, like more names, what are the ones you said here? Anches, Hoi Tan, things like that. It really would be great to get a map so we can triangulate where everything is.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'll consider it. I
need you to commit to it, Bill. I need you to commit.
You can need all you want. I'm just worried about like locking myself into things before I've thought it out particularly well,
Okay, is there any in-universe way of getting a map to us that doesn't lock you in?
I'm not sure, but anyway, I'll figure it out. I'll figure something out.
Okay, well, I would genuinely really love that. Subreddit, put pressure on Bill. Okay, cool, awesome. Any closing points on the work or anything final you want to add?
I feel like there was something, but the thing about the meals. What I was thinking of there was like obviously. We're familiar with turkey and ham being the traditional Christmas meal. Mm-hmm. And that's actually quite a recent invention, as far as I know, having turkey and ham for Christmas.
Wait, turkeys weren't invented, or were only invented recently? Oh.
That is precisely what I said, Edgar.
Yeah. So turkey and ham invented recently?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly recent thing. So I guess I was just thinking of that. But you're totally right about what you say about the cultures that are kind of like ours being often the most confusing. Because, if you go to Greece, you can't speak Greek. And, you expect things to be kind of weird and like unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking to, if I'm talking to someone who's English and they use a slang that I'm unfamiliar with, it can really kind of throw me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you listened to
it's a lot worse the other way around. I'm a lot better at in my experience dealing with unfamiliar slang from the UK than a lot of like British people that I've met who just get really thrown by Irish slang or Irish, like not even slang, just like speaking Hiberno English to them kind of really freaks them out.
Yeah, I don't know if you listened to the last episode of the Blind Boy podcast, links in the show notes. But
this morning's episode, or
I can't remember, but he was talking about how when he goes to America, he experiences culture shock, and I imagine it's for the same reason. It's like you're kind of like it's nearly here, but it's just a little bit different, and that's really weird. Whereas if you go to like Korea, for example, your brain's just like, okay, we're in a completely different situation. Brace yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it is really the places that are closest, or the cultures that are closest, that sometimes are the most alien in ways. But yeah, on the subject of Christmas, man, what's your ideal Christmas dinner? What's the canonical McGrathian dinner?
Turkey and ham.
And ham.
Turkey and ham.
And ham, interesting.
Sometimes beef.
Sometimes beef, but obviously then it's turkey and beef.
No.
Oh, just beef on its own?
No.
Intriguing.
Turkey and ham and beef.
Turkey and ham and beef.
Yeah.
What is this? A Game of Thrones style feast? Jesus.
Yes.
That's a lot of meat right there. Okay, and then are your family a Sprouts family? Do you do Sprouts?
I defend Sprouts. Sorry, I made a lot of noise there. I defend Sprouts.
Well,
Sprouts get a bad rap.
Do they need defending? Sprouts are amazing.
People hate Sprouts. Sprouts have this like huge hatedom.
Really? No, Sprouts are brilliant.
Yeah.
We eat Sprouts on the regular just for straight up dinner. They're great.
Yeah. I wouldn't eat them all the time, but I like them. I think they have their place. Then various other vegetables, gravy, cranberry sauce. The two big things for Christmas food for me though are turkey sandwiches later in the day.
Yeah.
Some nice white bread, kind of cooked earlier that day, turkey, and even like the next couple of days, it's still really good. Nice white bread, good bit of butter, and then you can experiment with adding like a little bit of gravy or a little bit of cranberry sauce. A little bit of salt is really good as well. And the desserts. The desserts are an extremely big deal.
But like flaming Christmas pudding?
We don't really do the flaming Christmas pudding thing that much. We do have pudding usually. My big thing is trifle.
Oh, were you a trifle man? Jesus, hello, the 1970s.
Man, I love trifle. I absolutely love trifle.
What? Hold on 1 second. Cat, shut up, like. It's not hard. The window's not going to attack you. Oh, I feel bad, right? Because the way of curing this cat making noise thing is to put it in its crate and then to put him outside. Because we only have 2 rooms. We have the bedroom, which he can't go in because Chloe is allergic to cats, and this room. So the only place for him to go if he's making noise is outside, and it's freezing outside, and I feel bad for him. So he just needs to shut up, like. But anyhow, describe to me the trifle. Is this because my idea of trifle is like you have like the breadcrumby type things or whatever they are, and they're suspended in the jelly along with like canned fruits and then custard and cream. And obviously a key component is more sherry than any human can actually consume in the trifle. Is that your canonical trifle as well?
Well, first of all, the custard can go to hell.
Are you not a custard fan?
Custard is grand. Doesn't need to be in a trifle.
No, excessive. No, I thoroughly disagree. Custard on everything. You know what's the brand?
Come down to visit and have some McGrath trifle.
Not if there's no custard.
You'll be a changed man for it.
I definitely won't. I legitimately, if there is, the ready-made custard that comes in like the cardboard sort of milk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, milk.
Yeah.
What's the Devon custard? And like it's not good custard, right? I thoroughly accept that this processed stuff is not good custard, but I swear to God, every time I see one of those things, I just want to cut it open and drink from the carton. And I have drank like a litre of custard before in a sitting because custard is just the nicest thing in the world. The custard on everything, man.
It has its place. I'll give you that. It does have its place. Doesn't need to be in a trifle.
Oh, that's...
At least not on our trifles. No, so it's not breadcrumbs. It's like a sponge cake chunked up. So, yeah. So there is actually sponge, and then there's like the bit of jam within the sponge cake. Yeah, and then a little bit of jelly, then the fruits, and whipped cream on top, and sherry.
And sherry. Yeah, that's about right. I didn't think people did sherry trifles anymore because again they were very popular like before we were born. I thought they fell out of favour, but like no, I'm with you though. They're nice.
Maybe they have,
but not in the McGrath household. No.
Nope.
Come for your sherry and your assortments of meats. I'm going home for Christmas this year, like every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I rang up my mother and was like, I'm coming home. And she's like, great, that's wonderful. And I was like, I know you don't want to accept that I'm vegetarian now because every time I come down, she insists on still making meat. And I'm like, I can't eat the meat. And it's gotten to the point now where I haven't eaten meat in so long that I worry from listening to other vegetarians that if I start to eat meat, my digestive system is going to not react well to this foreign sort of product, and I might end up getting ill. At least that's what happens to other vegetarians in my life. So I'm like, no, mom, I'm serious. You need to not, or you need to have something I can eat. Like, it can't be all meat plus veg stewed in meat juices. Like, there needs to be something. And she's like, oh, that's wonderful. I'll make a lasagna so. And I'm like, along with everything else. She's like, no, but just lasagna. So the Christmas dinner in our household, because of me, is just a real plain lasagna. I'm like, great. That's wonderful. I ruined Christmas for everyone.
Like a corn lasagna, or
no, like, yeah, but just no, not with mince. It's just, basically just a lot of aubergine layers and layers of veg with pasta and the lasagna sauce running through it.
That sounds pretty sweet.
It does, but it's also not canonically very Christmas. And to be fair, I think my mother just wanted to get out of doing the big feast. So the minute she was like, oh my God, no meat, fantastic, lasagna for everyone.
Blame it on Edgar.
Everyone will blame it on Edgar. Edgar's ruined Christmas. But anyhow, should we move on to my video?
Yes, let's.
Okay, so as usual, I made a video. The video came out quite a while ago because for logistical reasons, we had problems scheduling this podcast. One of which I was tired on the day that we were meant to do it, so my fault. But the last video, at the time of this recording, it was about tides. And links will be in the show notes, and you can check it out. Overall, I think it worked out really well. A couple of things I want to bring up that was highlighted in comments that I think are pertinent. One is that I need to emphasize that the system I propose for calculating tides is, I said this in the video, but I need to emphasize it's not 100% accurate. In that, like, yeah, no one would write a paper using the formulae I outline in the video. There's every formula has behind it a whole bunch of assumptions and things that it's not taking into account. So everyone needs to be aware of that. They are approximations. I think they're good approximations, but they are approximations. Because a couple of people were like, why aren't you taking X factor into account? And purely because I think we need to simplify these things because it gets really complicated. Make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing that is being discussed on the Patreon Discord is I may be potentially wrong about how I portrayed tides on a multi-moon system.
Okay.
For those who've watched the video, I show a planet and I show tidal bulges and I show multiple moons and I show multiple tidal bulges tracking each of the moons. And someone brought up a very astute comment and was like, well, hang on now, the other bulge, like one bulge is like gravitational attraction to a moon. On the other side of the planet, the other bulge is due to centripetal forces when the objects spin around their barycenter. But there's only one barycenter in the center of a multi-moon system. So the notion that each of the moons would have two tidal bulges may be false. And maybe there will only be one tidal bulge for one of the moons or something like that. Or
the average them or something.
Yeah, exactly. And now that's being discussed back and forth on the Discord. Someone asked a whole bunch of physics friends and they tentatively were like, I guess each moon would have a tidal bulge. And then other people were like, no, it can't have a tidal bulge. I've yet to independently confirm this. But if I do, I will publish the correction on that. So just heads up for people. Oh, and also on the subject of corrections, another Patreon had a great idea of publishing a set of corrections. So I'm going to, from the next video forward, I'm going to keep a Google Doc with all corrections and clarifications for each of the videos and just make it public always. So people can always go check against that if any new information has come out. Which I think was an awesome suggestion. Like probably one of the best suggestions I've gotten from anyone over the course of making this channel, which is deadly. And then the final point on my end, before I pass it over for Q's with Bill, is that I reached out to a viewer called Zach. I won't be more specific than that, who is a physics major. And he and I, well, he rather.
Who is a tideologist.
What?
Zach, who is a tideologist.
Who's a tideologist? Yes, Zach, who is a tideologist. I asked him to develop a model of the tides that is better representative of real-world physics than the formulae I give in the video, but ultimately gives, in quotes, worse outputs because again, there's some approximations going on. That model didn't make it into the video because I felt it was less well immediately understandable, but I want to link it in the show notes for this. So if you're interested in having a model for tides that takes into account things like the big G, the gravitational effect, it takes into account like different masses, and it takes into account just more real world physics, go check it out. The spreadsheet is not pretty. It's not done up the way I usually do it. It's a very sort of like a beta sort of thing, but have a gander. And bear in mind as well that the outputs are approximations, so they're not going to be 100% accurate. But hopefully, the model will be more generally accurate than the GURPS-based one in the video, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And massive thanks to Zach. He gave like 5 hours of his time to do this. We had a 3-hour Skype call running over maths, and he's just a lovely, lovely chap. And super intelligent dude, and it was a pleasure to talk to him. So massive thank you to Zach. And that is my points on tides. Do you have anything? Did you watch the video? Do you have anything to add? Any questions?
I watched the video. Yeah, that was really good.
Cool.
I have 2 points.
2 points, not questions. Points. This is where he tells me I'm wrong. Okay.
Well, no. One of them is definitely a question.
Okay, let's start with the question.
So tides, right?
I'm aware of them.
Right, and like at high tide, say at the extreme inside of the Bay of Fundy, it's a really, really big difference.
Yeah.
And say then at the mouth of the Bay of Fundy, it's going to be a small difference. Right?
Okay, is it? Okay, but go on.
Okay, well, say then immediately outside the Bay of Fundy is going to be a smaller difference.
Right.
Right. So does that mean that at high tide, or let's say at low tide, if you sail out of the Bay of Fundy, you have to swim, you have to sail uphill?
Maybe, I guess. But
and the same thing applies in the Atlantic. Like if there's no major tide in the Atlantic, right? And you sail through the Straits of Gibraltar at, say, low tide or high tide, then you're going from somewhere that is basically pretty static to the outside, where it could be either at its high extreme or its low extreme. So you're going to have to either sail uphill or downhill.
I guess, but is the concept of sailing uphill that strange? If we think...
Yes!
No, hang on now. But think of... if we think of tides as just being kind of like very big waves, sure, boats sail uphill on waves all the time.
Yeah, but that's like a very kind of a discrete kind of thing. Like you can see, okay, it goes over the hill and, that's moving up and down. And the way I'm figuring this out to make sense in my head is that like a succession of waves will be very slightly different on one side than on the other. So you'll gradually move uphill or downhill and it won't be a noticeable thing. But it's a weird concept to me.
Man, I don't know, man. I get that, yeah, okay, it is weird, but it does happen. And also as well with the, there's,
But it obviously happens, and that's why it's so weird, because water is, water doesn't flow uphill.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, real life is lit is the summary of this. Yeah, no, that's fair. But it also occurs with tsunamis, in that, when tsunamis strike at sea, someone please correct me if I'm wrong with this, but the impression I get is that it's just, if you were sailing in direction of tsunami, the epicenter of tsunami, you would just there'd be like this sort of raising of the water level, and you would just kind of go up that and then come back down the end, because the waves aren't breaking out at sea. It's just kind of a swelling, and you have to like ride over that swelling. So yeah, it's mental, but you know, it kind of happens like.
But that's more like the level is changing and lifting you with it, than going from a high place to a low place.
Yeah, but hang on.
Or a low place to a high place.
Maybe I'm not conceptualizing this correctly, but is that not what's occurring with high and low tides? The level is changing as...
Yeah, but not if you're, like, if it is changed, right? It's say, like, you're at high tide and you're going to somewhere else that's high tide. Like, if you do that quickly, you have to sail uphill. And it's not like the water is carrying you with it, because it's...
yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I guess it must be that it's a dynamic system, and like it'll just be like a succession of waves will like gradually take you up, but it wrinkles my brain.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. That's not the thing that I came up with, but yeah, it's mental. Water and tides are mental. That was the point, I'm assuming. What's the question?
That was the question. Do you sail uphill and downhill?
Oh, okay. What's the point?
So you know your thing about the intertidal zones being super important for the evolution of life.
Caveat on that. That is a point that I should have brought up before that I forgot.
Okay.
No, go finish. I'll put the caveat at the end.
There's a sort of a mammalian chauvinism in what you said, Edgar.
A mammalian chauvinism. That is not what I was going to put in my caveat. But I mean, I guess. But I thought all life came from the ocean, so that would also be like a reptilian chauvinism, no?
Okay. Yeah. No. Fair enough. A vertebrate. Well, so because maybe fish are still vertebrates.
A non-aquatic, a terran chauvinism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or things at least like whales and stuff are of like terran or of land-based lineage, terrestrial lineage, even though they're gone back to aquaticism. But yeah. What about like did insects? Were there insects living above the water and on land before the first tetrapods?
I have no idea, because that was not a line of research I went down for this. So I can't answer that. That would be a thing I would probably look into if I ever do exobiology.
Yeah. So
I'm going to have to leave that an unanswered question. The thing I want to add about the intertidal zone is I received 2 comments. So it's not unanimous, but 2 comments that stated that I also might be wrong about the intertidal zone thing, because apparently, and I did not know this, apparently life came out of the water via rivers and not via the sea. Which is problematic because there's no tides really on a river per se. Mm-hmm. So that's... that would be a count against that point. And I can't remember, I've lost my leading sources for that. I can't remember where I sourced that thing. So I'm frantically trying to figure out whether or not this intertidal thing is correct. Because I was always of the impression that it was they just came from the sea. That's what I always thought. Like, life came from the sea. Apparently, life came from like freshwater lakes and rivers and the like.
Well, maybe it got into them from the sea.
Right, but if their stepping out point is via, like, say, lakes and stuff, there's no intertidal zone mechanic going on there, do you know? So again, that's not verified, and it certainly wasn't a majority of comments. I said I think it was only 2. So I still need to check if that's actually a thing. Again, will be published in my what's the fancy schmancy Latin word? Errata? Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah, my errata. I'm going to call it errata, and I can feel all self-important about myself. So, yeah, I unfortunately, I don't know about the insects, man.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so any other points?
No, those were my 2 takeaways from the video. I thought it was a really solid video. Just what you said there, the last thing reminded me, though. Did you see that, what they published in the last couple of days?
Well, who's
that
they?
They've... What?
Who is they?
You know, they.
Oh,
the guys who do the publishing.
Capital T, they, yes.
That they've identified a vast underground ecosystem on Earth, that they think within, they've pretty much confirmed within the Earth that there's something between 15 billion and 23 billion tons of microorganisms living inside Earth's crust.
Really?
Yeah, kind of previously not really that well known about.
Wow, that's a whole lot of new species.
Yeah.
Now here comes a silly question. Do we count microorganisms as species? We must do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do. At what point do we stop at all? Like, do we count bacteria as species?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So that means there's a whole plethora of new species we've never found that we would start finding.
Yep.
Cool. That's pretty cool. Do you know how they came across this?
Let me read. So I'm reading this from The Guardian. I'll send you the link for this.
Cool.
There's probably better ones, but this is the one that I saw. Researchers at the Deep Carbon Observatory say the diversity of underworld species bears comparison to the Amazon or Galapagos Islands.
Wow.
But it's still largely pristine because people have yet to probe the subsurface. So
I wonder what they're defining as subsurface as well, because we've probed deep underground.
But only, it says have yet to probe most of the subsurface. So yeah, we've dug pretty deep, but like only in a very, very few locations.
Right. So it's not that this like blanket of microbacteria is microorganisms, whatever they are.
Microorganisms is the term used here.
Microorganisms. It's not that they're necessarily very, very deep down. Rather, we haven't entered their realm in very many points. That's cool.
Samples were taken from boreholes more than 5 kilometers deep and undersea drilling sites to construct models of the ecosystem and estimate how much living carbon it might contain.
Wow, that's really interesting. Send me the link. I'll have a read of that. All right, green room time. Folks, we just recorded a whole bit for the green room, but my mic fell off. So I don't know whether or not it recorded. So we're just going to record it all again to be absolute sure. So this is going to bore the life out of Bill because he's heard it all before. But at least you will hear it for the first time.
It's fine.
Says he angrily.
I'm sniffing angrily like a woman in a Robert Jordan novel.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So last time, since we recorded last, I have been abroad on 2 separate occasions to do Artifexian related things. In chronological order, I was in LA for PatreCon, the annual Patreon convention. And then a few days ago, I was in Bristol to give a talk at Bristol University. And so I thought it might be a fun idea to kind of do a sort of like foreigner abroad and my sort of impressions I have of these areas that I traveled in. You up for that?
I'm still up for that.
You're still up. Of course, you're up for that. Bristol. 2 things about Bristol that were pretty epic and unexpected. One, it's the most compact city I have ever been to. We were afraid that we wouldn't get to see all the sites we wanted to see, but we covered them in basically a day, just walking around the city. Super compact. Also a very pretty city as well, I may add. It was very, very beautiful. So we greatly enjoyed it there.
And it's where trip hop comes from.
It's where what?
Trip hop.
Trip hop?
Yeah. It's like an electronic music style from the 90s.
And also Banksy's from there as well, I think.
But sure, we won't hold that against it.
We won't meet to blast you in seconds. I'm not going to ask for opinions on Banksy. We'll talk about it some other time. For listeners of Hello Internet, I went to visit the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which has appeared on Hello Internet before. That was pretty epic. It's a pretty epic bridge. I'll leave links in the show notes. It's super high up, and it's if you're afraid of heights like I am, it's a tough walk across, but I managed to do it, so I was proud of myself. Aside from my discovering coconut lattes as well in Bristol, that was pretty much Bristol. Very beautiful, very small, very hilly. It was great. And like I said, I was there to give a talk in the university. My talk was about terraforming Mars and how to figure out the mechanics of Martian oceans.
Cool.
Which I think it went down fairly well. There's at least 2 people in the audience who were really into it. Like they were like asking tons of questions, and you could see them looking at me. I could see them looking at me being all like, "We dig this." So that was fun to kind of experience. But yeah, so on that topic, right? I had loads of fun giving this talk, and I had loads of fun doing the TEDx talk last year or a year ago, or 2 years ago rather. And I just put a call out there. If anyone runs any sort of societies, like in universities or any clubs or things like that, and they would like to have either me and Bill, or just Bill, come over and talk about some of the stuff we talk about here, hit us up in the email and we'll get back to you and see if it works out. Because yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it's really good for me to get out of the house away from just editing in front of a laptop. Like it was really fun. And Bill said, well, I recorded this section about 10 minutes ago, that he'd be up for it too. So, so last time Bill was trying to distract me by editing the show notes, and after his last edit, which read "Artifexian ads on tour," he wrote, "Say this bit again" in cap lock. So I've obliged, and I will say this bit again. Thanks, Bill. Final thing, massive thanks to Rose from the University of Bristol, who set it all up and had me over, and she was absolutely lovely, incredibly professional, and it was just, the whole experience was an absolute joy. So massive thanks to Rose and I think it's the Physics Society over there. Did a great job. So yeah, Bristol done, yeah?
Bristol done.
Bristol
Tick.
Done. Tick. Item removed from the to-do list. Patreon. I'm not going to talk about Patreon too much, because it was a convention about like inside Patreon, like things like, figuring out metrics and strategies and things like that. So
Patreon inside baseball stuff.
Inside baseball stuff. It was very not interesting to anyone who isn't making a living on Patreon. But I do want to talk about like weirdness in America. Couple of points. One, every time I go to America, I'm reminded that cartoons exist, in the sense that we only ever experience America here through media and through cartoons and films. And you land in America and you're like, oh, all those things I've seen on telly actually do exist. And it's like the little things like fire hydrants. We don't have those here. And it's really weird seeing them at the street corner in LA, these like colourful fire hydrants. It's really bizarre from an outsider's point of view. The yellow school buses with the little stop sign on the back, like those are weird to see in real life and not on The Simpsons. It's bizarre. LA looks like GTA 5, which is weird. And there's no European cars on the streets, which is really weird. And you see a lot of American muscle and Japanese imports, and you're like, oh, this is weird. This isn't
Fast and Furious stuff.
Fast and the Furious stuff, exactly. And so like what we said in the main section, it's this idea of you feel like you're at home. It's almost like being at home, but everything is slightly different. Like you're in a Twilight Zone version of your country. And I find it endlessly fascinating.
They do say it's often the least changes that have the most striking effect upon the stranger.
Oh, who said that?
It was Dajag Teshensha, who was lieutenant in the Tamar Company.
Oh, it's a brilliant tie-in. I'm sorry I didn't pick up on it. So, also another really cool point about LA was its massive diversity. Which I wasn't expecting, because my only other experience of America really was Denver. And I got the impression immediately that LA was way more diverse. And it was bizarre kind of walking along the streets and hearing, Spanish and Korean and like loads of other languages. And then like coming into Patreon and seeing the diversity drop off. Like the diversity inside Patreon was still high, but it was nothing compared to outside, and like the languages were just English inside Patreon. But when you step outside, it's like you heard Spanish, Korean, everything. So that was kind of weird. And it reminds me of how the country, how Ireland is just like not diverse at all, really. Which is great, like, because I have foreign friends. I have friends who are people of colour, but it's not to the same level of LA. and you kind of like, you step outside and you're like, oh wow, this is a very different world, you know, which is great, which is really, really cool. And then last point is police. The police in America are crazy, and I cannot get over them at all. Their cars are like armored, you know, battle vehicles, you know, with massive fenders on the front for when they need to plow through walls or whatever. Like these souped up huge monsters of cars. And like the policemen, men and women themselves, they're like dressed in like this ex-military sort of gear, or at least that looks like from my perspective, and like exposed guns and like a bulletproof vest. And it's just, I've never experienced this before in any other city I've ever been to, but like I felt decidedly like unsafe, or I felt deeply unsafe around these cops. Like I knew they weren't going to do anything to me, but like there's just the notion that you have this big like burly dude in a bulletproof vest and an exposed gun just walking towards you is just deeply, deeply disconcerting. And it's not an image that like Irish police give off. Well, one, they're not armed, but also they're not decked out like they should be fighting a war. So that was a bizarre thing, and it was very disconcerting to experience as a foreigner. And I was there for like a week, and it never got normal. Like it was always kind of like that. That's very strange and weird. And I found myself being like very careful about my behavior, which is silly, but their demeanor inspired that reaction. It was bizarre.
It's their purpose, I suppose.
It is their purpose, but I don't know. Being European, I kind of think that policing can be done without being military, without militarizing the police force, you know? Again,
most of France is military police.
Is most of France military police?
Yeah, most, like, outside cities. I was just reading about this yesterday. Outside cities, as far as I know, most of the police in France are gendarmes.
Really?
They're militarized police. Like they're part of the military that act as police.
But this is definitely not the norm in Europe. Surely most countries have police akin to ours.
It's fairly common in Europe, man.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. Sorry. So then let me rephrase. Being Irish, I think you can do policing without militarizing it. Because, you know, like we don't carry guns. They don't carry guns here, but it's not like there's anarchy in the streets. Although there is anarchy in my local park, so maybe. But I don't know. It can be done in a more friendly and less aggressive manner. I don't know, but not that I don't want to like say, you know, oh, Americans, your city, you should do things my way. It's just experiences of a foreigner abroad. But yeah, so that was my travels. Went through that relatively quickly because the main course bill is the second installment of the Bank of Artifexia.
Oh boy!
The letters have been coming through the door, and it is class. So I sent you a link to an imager. How does one pronounce that?
I say imager.
Imager. Let's go with that. So we have, for the ASMR people, we have this letter. And then we have this card, which had money in them. So I am going to just beat into this really quickly. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's do the ones that didn't have letters. So Mr. Clockwork Door was so kind as to supply a whole ton of banknotes since the last time we recorded. He supplied 2 Brazilian real, which you should have a picture of there, Bill. Which now means I have a currency from South America, which is awesome. That 2 Brazilian real is 45 cents euro, 51 US dollars, 0.51 US dollars, and 0.4 Great British pounds. So that's class. Then he also gave I think both 1 and 10 Romanian leu, L-E-U, leu. And the $1 bill is 22 cents euro, 25 cents US dollars and 19 cents Great British pounds. And then he gave Swiss francs, 10 Swiss francs, and I adore the look of this banknote. It is gorgeous, and it's truly unique. I love it. Links in the show notes. 10 Swiss francs is 887 euro, 10 US dollars, and 793 Great British pounds. So that's pretty cool. Dollars to francs is almost exact, which is pretty awesome. That was from Mr. Clockwork Door. Thanks to Mr. Clockwork Door. Again, everyone in Dublin, go patronise his fine establishment. Links in the show notes. And the captain also managed to drum up some won, which you don't have a picture of in front of you, Bill, though. So I now have 1,000 won note, which is 78 cents in euro, 89 cents in US dollars, and 71 cents in Great British pounds. Yeah?
Cool.
Any questions about those before we get into letters?
Let's see. So the Romanian, the reals. So have we got all of the continents covered now? We don't have anything from Oceania, do we?
Yes.
So is that the last remaining continent?
That is the last remaining continent.
That
but I say
has
yes,
a currency.
Sorry, go on.
That's the last remaining continent of the continents that have currency.
Technically, you can buy Antarctic currency, which is just kind of like just for artistic sake. It's not an actual legal tender. I kind of thought about doing that, but then I was like, that's a waste of time. But yes, that is all the continents, barring Oceania. But we need but wait about 5 minutes until Oceania will be covered.
Why is that?
Well, because we got a wonderful card from a chap from Australia called Will. I'm not going to read out the second name, but I'll send it to you afterwards because you need to see this in order for the joke to make sense in the card. So Will writes, "Dear Edgar and Bill, I'm not sure why I sound like I'm straight out of A Knight's Tale, but I'll take it. Warmest Christmas wishes to you from afar. Here's $5 dues and a silly card." And the card is indeed silly. I will send it to you after the show.
Very good.
So Will sent $5 dues, and which with conversion is €316, 360 US dollars, and 283 Great British pounds. In general, man, I'm a fan of that Australian banknote. I like it. I like the gradients. It could do without the Queen, but that might just be my feelings towards the Queen.
A lot of things could do without the Queen.
And also the wheat, the things that look like little bits of wheat there. Links in the show notes to this as well. It looks a little bit like bacterium, so maybe rethink that design. But other than that, I think it's solid. And like I said, I really enjoy the sort of purple, yellow, pink gradient. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that, now, we have all the continents covered, which is class. It's so cool.
Sweet.
And so then our final letter comes from a Zig. I think it's Zig. It's either Zig or... It's either Sig or Zig. It's S-I-G or Z-I-G. I can't read the fancy handwriting. And this one comes from New Jersey in the United States. And it is... Zig has sent 100 new Taiwan dollars.
Oh, cool.
Which is the middle one of the picture marked 100 new Taiwan dollars. And the conversion rate there is 284 euros, 323 US dollars, and 254 Great British pounds. And they've also sent, I might actually screenshot this and send it on, because they've also given a translation of what is on the banknote. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, like as in who the people are and what the symbols stand for. And they also list some interesting features. Which I think is pretty cool. So not only did we get a really lovely letter, with the usual thank you for the podcast, all that, we got actual here's what this bill does, which is really, really useful. So that's class. That is the Bank of Artifexian. And I know we have at least one more note on its way, which is quite special. And I want to thank that person. They know who they are for sending this. And I hope it arrives soon, because I can't wait to talk about it next time. And again, thank you all for contributing to this. It's genuinely lovely. And I bought a little little banknote album to keep it all in, and I'm really digging this sort of. I've become a collector of currency. It's great. So, do you have anything to add?
I don't know. Let me just have another quick look through these banknotes. The gradient on the Australian one is kind of fun.
I really like it. I really do like it.
The colour of the Swiss one is quite fun as well. Sort of striking yellow-orange kind of thing.
And I really like the hands. I think that's really beautiful. It reminds me of, do you know of an artist called Albrecht Dürer?
I think so.
So he has this really famous painting. I don't know what it's called in English, but it's the Betende Hände, so praying hands maybe. And it's just this picture of hands held in prayer.
Yes.
It was one of my father's favorite paintings, or sorry, I don't know if it's a painting or a sketch or whatever, favorite bits of art growing up. And he would, this is going to sound worse than it actually is, but he would drill my artistic skills using that picture. So I created countless copies of the Betende Hände to try and get good with hands, because hands are just not easy to draw without making them look really weird. And so the Swiss franc, this 10 Swiss franc looks and reminds me of the Betende Hände. It's a very, very classical sort of posing of the hands. I think it's really cool. And that juxtaposition with kind of the like techie globe beside it, I think is really beautiful.
For sure. Yeah. Way to go, Switzerland.
Way to go, Switzerland. And yeah, so that's the thing. That is the contribution. We just need to wait for some Argentinian currency when you go to Argentina, Bill.
Yes.
Can't wait.
I will collect some. I will bring some back.
Excellent.
We already have Brazilian, of course, but yeah, I'll get some Argentinian dollars. I don't know what they have in Argentina.
Argentinian euro. It's the Argentine peso.
Argentine peso.
So I wouldn't. Oh God, what's their lowest note? 1 peso is 0.023 euro. Oh. Does Argentina experience very high inflation?
I think it does. I think it's had a couple of crashes over the last few decades.
Do you know why? Because I don't really know much about currency. Do you know why a lot of Asian currencies tend to be? Is it devalued the correct word? As in, they tend to have very high numbers on them.
No, why is that?
No, but I'm asking you. Do you know why? I have no idea.
No, I don't.
Because the Japanese currency is again devalued is probably not the correct word here. Has lots of numbers on it. Korean has lots of numbers. Indonesian money had lots of numbers. From what I can see of the Chinese money in my collection, same thing. Taiwan, same thing. And it seems to be a thing, and I don't know why that's the case. And then like in the likes of the States and Europe, for the most part, it seems to be not like that. I don't know. I have no idea. But there you go. Bank of Artifexian. I can't wait for another exciting installment come 2019. Final thing before we wrap up is this is obviously the last episode before Christmas and the New Year. So I just want to take a quick second to thank Bill for talking to me for another year, which is great.
Edgar, it has been my pleasure, and thank you for talking to me.
'Tis the season of spreading good cheer, so I need to say thanks. Thanks to everyone for listening to the show. It's great. Thanks for sending in the currency. Thanks for contributing on the subreddit and via emails. You all are amazing, and thanks to the patrons for supporting the show. I want to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, a Happy New Year. I hope 2018 closes itself out in a auspicious manner for you. Is that the correct word?
Yeah.
Positive,
I guess.
positively auspicious, as in exceedingly positive.
I think auspicious means like that it bodes well for the future, but that's also the case, I suppose.
Totally. So yeah, have a great finish 2018, and we will see you in 2019. Same to you, Bill.
Same to you, Edgar.
Excellent. All right. Until next time.
Until next year.
Edgar
out.